Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. It's no secret that, when in need of money, someone is willing to go to extreme lengths. I'm not morally corrupt enough to murder, but I was still desperate to do things close to that. The divorce had been hard on me, and I wanted to get out of that house and just live on my own. For that, you need green, and my job wasn't paying enough for me to just wander off and change my address so quickly. In retrospective, maybe it wasn't so wise to look for a job on the dark web. Those pay the most, though, and I didn't want to spend my time caring for some kid or old lady only to get paid $10 an hour. I started browsing whatever forum I could find and filtered my search so that I wouldn't have to kill anyone or sleep with anyone. After a while, I came across offerings of package deliveries and such things. Deliver this to this address, show up to this house, etc., etc. It was all right by me. But I didn't have a car, and I couldn't just walk for miles with suspicious boxes in hand. I finally came across this listing. Museum worker needed. $100 go to our temporary exhibition hosted somewhere in the suburbs. I checked the address on Google Maps and found some abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. I'd driven by it a few times, back when the family car was also my car. I thought I could give it a try. Maybe it was some contemporary art stuff, some voodoo statues or cursed items. I didn't believe in any of that, so it really wasn't a problem to me. It said I had to be there during the week, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Sundays were off. The exhibition would run for around 3 months. I quickly added up some numbers, $100 an hour, for 6 hours a day, for 6 days a week, for 3 months. That would certainly cover for a deposit and some second-hand car, I figured. That would be enough to help me get by. I ran through the possibilities of weird implications this ad might have. Maybe the museum was a front for human trafficking, drug dealing, or other illegal things. I don't even know why I said maybe. That was surely the case. I just had to be careful and not look into things too much. Or maybe the exhibition was hosted by some eccentric millionaire who wanted to display his dubious antiques. Either way, $100 is $100, I replied, and got an instant response. Next thing I know, I was hired. With the little money that I had, I bought a bike and some headphones to help pass the time. I arrived to the warehouse one Monday at 10 a.m., eager to get the job started and get my money. I wasn't expecting it to be so empty. The warehouse was huge on the inside, but the items displayed were very few. Mostly paintings covering the walls and some wooden statues, extremely tall. They almost reached the ceiling of the warehouse, and I couldn't really see their faces. All of them were sort of bent down, almost as if they were giants watching so as not to step on us. Some notebooks were on display, too. Most of them had drawings or scribbles. They weren't extraordinary. I really couldn't tell what I was looking at. I saw some unknown surgical equipment. It looked almost medieval. Next to it, a pair of ordinary scissors. I thought at first that it was ironic or just a piece of art, but the washed-out lady that had led me in there told me that those particular scissors were authentic and extremely important. I couldn't really tell what age the lady was. She was Asian, her skin clear and luminous, based solely off that. I could have guessed she was in her teens, but her eyes moved around a lot and had a certain darkness that you only gain with age. Contrasting to her face, her hands were wrinkled and stained. Her hair fell in long threads on her back and was tangled towards the end. It looked unwashed. The most interesting part consisted in the last 3 items displayed on the opposing wall to the entrance. If I sat at my desk, near the entrance the wall was almost invisible, hidden in shadows. I didn't understand why the lights were so dim. The lady explained that it contributed to the atmosphere of the exhibition. One of the items was a low, round wooden table. The plaque in front of it read, "The Hunger." The table was chewed and clawed at the edges. I think it used to be square, but the wood had been bitten off and chewed to the point where the corners were rounded. The teeth marks on the table were human. I figured it must have been some art piece. The other item was a pair of shoes. The plaque read, "The Shoes That Walked Home." They were old, made of leather and worn out in impossible places, as if whoever had worn them had walked in circles continuously. The last item was an empty pedestal. Its plaque read, "Painter do not look when occupied." I stared at it a while. "Such an interesting concept," I mumbled, noticing the lady's unblinking gaze on me. "Yes," she replied. "Don't look when it's occupied, though." "How would I know?" "You'll see. It's a really easy job. You don't have a lot of duties, and you earn so much money by basically doing nothing. You must understand we value your discretion and lack of curiosity the most." "Yes, thanks," I responded quickly. Suddenly I realized I didn't really want her to leave. That didn't stop her from traversing the warehouse and shutting the door behind her. Without any other formalities, I was left alone with the art. My job was to sit at the desk and greet visitors, sell them tickets. I noticed that the stack of tickets was relatively small. They didn't really expect visitors. As I imagined, the warehouse was at the edge of town, and nothing really promoted this exhibition. No one was going to come. I decided I would put on some music and study the paintings. I got up and moved in front of the first, titled "My Mother." It showed a beautiful sea landscape, the crystal waves melting into the bright shore. It was the type of scenery you'd find before a storm, so bright and yet ominous, as if it knew what it awaited. I couldn't find any trace of a woman, though. Right when I was about to move to the next painting, my neck tensed up. It's impossible to describe it. The sudden alarming urge to run, the panic that builds up in your chest. I was afraid to turn around, and yet I hated having my back turned to the room. I took a deep breath. I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. I didn't turn around. I kept locking eyes with my mother, afraid to act on the impulse of running back to my desk. After torturous moments where my heart was threatening to jump out of my chest, I did a swift turn and then plunged back to my desk. "Whew," I said out loud. "This place is creepy as fuck." Why? Because I don't know, it's just fucking odd. I wouldn't pay money to come here. My throat was so dry it was itching. In the cold air, drops of sweat began gathering on my forehead. My eyes darted to various points of the room, to the paintings, to the statues, to its corners. Who had I spoken to? Who even was that? I stared at the closed entrance door. "Who is that?" I got no answer. "Fuck off. Just answer me." I heard you loud and clear. I know that someone is in here. You have to, I began hopelessly. You have to. Buy a ticket to get in. I heard a clatter in the back of the warehouse. The hunger. The shoes that walked home. The painter. Did the pedestal refer to the one who had made the paintings? I stood up and made my way slowly to the back. I kept looking at the floor until I saw the edges of the hunger. In the dim light, I could make out the shadow of the pedestal, and on it, I saw the shadow of a figure. It looked humanoid, like someone crouched over. I couldn't tell which direction it was facing. I was so cold. I stepped back, slowly, the way I came. At last, after what felt like billions of years, I sat down on my chair. I spent the remaining time of my shift there, too disturbed to listen to music. At some point, I heard the faint sound of wet footsteps coming from the back. You know when you're little, and you begin recognizing the walk of your family members as they're coming up the stairs. How you can distinguish between your younger brother's upbeat walk and your father's slow, heavy steps. These footsteps sounded as if those two patterns were combined, almost like limping. They went on for a few seconds, then faded without reaching a certain destination. I swore to myself that I would quit the next day. However, when I saw the bank transfer that night, I thought it wasn't really a bad job. It's not like I was being chased around or hurt in any way. I just had to sit down. I dreamt, however, of those footsteps reaching me at last. It's Tuesday, and as I'm writing this, I can hear them faintly in the back. I just hope that they appreciate my discretion. I wonder if the hunger and the shoes that walked home are connected in some way, but they don't pay me to be curious. Story number 2. It had only been 2 weeks since I moved into my new house. I never thought I'd have enough money for a cute little home with a garden like this. But luck was finally on my side, and lately, I'd been earning well. The house wasn't big. 2 small rooms, a tiny kitchen, and an even smaller bathroom, which meant the washing machine had to go in the basement, where I set up a little laundry area. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The neighborhood was quiet, too, with friendly neighbors. Most people around here had families, but even in that short time, I'd gotten along with everyone. I thought nothing could ruin this idyllic little life I had carved out for myself. That is, until the day I went down to the laundry room with a basket of dirty clothes. As I made my way down the stairs, something felt off. There was something hanging from the narrow wall between the shelves, something I didn't register at first. When I turned on the light and stepped closer, I finally realized what it was. Hand. A human hand was sticking out of the wall, only up to just before the wrist. It dangled lifelessly. A man's hand. It looked as if someone had been sealed inside the wall. Cold sweat broke out all over me. What the hell was this? There. Was nothing there yesterday? Was this some kind of sick joke? Should I call the police? What was I supposed to do? I panicked silently until the hand suddenly moved. As if it sensed I was pacing back and forth, it waved at me, flailing like someone drowning, begging to be pulled out. Without thinking, I grabbed it and started pulling. It didn't budge, like it really was part of the wall. The hand started twitching violently, signaling me to stop yanking. "Are you okay?" I asked, not even knowing if I was talking to the wall or the hand. The hand just kept waving, maybe trying to say no. What was I supposed to do? How could I help someone who was somehow trapped inside my wall? Then I had an idea. I ran back, upstairs, and grabbed a pen and a notepad. I pressed the pen into the hand, then held the paper out in front of it. "Are you okay? How can I help you?" I asked again, louder this time, just in case the person inside could hear me. The hand started writing, almost immediately. "Help," it wrote. I was pacing up and down in the basement. What the hell was I supposed to do? I called the fire department, hoping maybe they could help, but they hung up as soon as I told them there was a man's hand sticking out of my wall. I was an idiot. Maybe I should have made something up just to get them to come. Whatever. I'd handle this myself, just like I handled getting this house in the first place. I went back upstairs. I knew there had to be a hammer and chisel somewhere. The house wasn't fully furnished yet, and the kitchen still needed some renovation, so it was hard to find anything. But eventually, I found my tools. I rushed back down to the basement with them, and that's when I got the next surprise. The hand was sticking out more than before. I could now see all the way up to the man's bicep, and a little farther down the wall, just barely poking out, were the tips of another hand's fingers. 2 hands now, both coming out of the wall. Was shocked for a moment, but then quickly grabbed the tools and started chiseling around the first arm. The hands twisted in agony. They writhed like a worm cut in half. It was a horrifying sight. I immediately stopped and handed the paper to the hand again. "Are you okay? Did it hurt when I started breaking the wall?" "I just thought it might help. You get out faster." The hand began writing again, slowly, shakily, the letters barely legible. "Yes, please don't. Let's just wait." I didn't know if I could trust him, but I agreed. Who was this man? And how did he end up inside my wall? Some kind of experiment? What the hell was going on? I brought down a chair for myself, sat there, waiting, staring at the wall, or more precisely, at the man inside it. That's when I noticed something near the bottom of the wall. A few toes were sticking out. My wall looked like someone was trying to walk out of it, just very, very slowly. What the hell was happening here? I gave up on the idea of calling for help. No one would believe me anyway. I'd deal with this on my own, whatever it was. "What's your name? Who are you?" I asked, getting up from the chair. The hand started writing on the paper again. "My name's Jack. I don't know how I ended up here. I was just walking home from work." I eyed the hand suspiciously again. This was all too weird. How did Jack get here? And how was he even alive with most of his body trapped inside a wall? But there wasn't much I could do for him. Anything I tried just caused him unbearable pain, and I couldn't help him get out any faster. I was starving by then, and I had spent nearly the whole morning down there, so I ran out to grab food from the nearby diner. I rushed faster than I ever had in my life. I didn't want to miss what might happen next with Jack and the wall. All I could think was, please let everything be the same when I get back. But when I returned, I got another horrifying surprise. His right arm was out all the way to the shoulder. The left arm hung only to the middle of the forearm. His left leg was sticking out up to the knee, like he'd taken a step forward. But it was crooked and jerky, like it had glitched halfway out of the wall. Only the foot of his right leg had emerged. My wall looked utterly grotesque, like something from a disturbing museum exhibit. I ate my lunch down in the basement. I didn't want to miss a single moment. But whenever I was there, Jack barely moved. His hands twitched from time to time. His legs shifted occasionally. But he didn't come any further out of the wall. "Jack, are you even human?" I asked, after a long silence. Jack's hands began writing again. At least by now he could hold the notepad himself. "Of course I'm human. I don't know what the hell happened. I just want to go home, God damn it." I felt a bit sorry for the guy. How the hell could he end up in a situation like this? Did someone do this to him? Or was it something else? Watching the wall was getting pretty dull. Time crawled by slowly. That's when my doorbell rang. Someone was at my door. I hurried upstairs, hoping somehow that it might be connected to Jack. Maybe someone had come with an explanation, but it was just my neighbor. He invited me to a backyard party for the weekend. He and his wife were hosting a little cookout with a kiddie pool, and they were inviting the other neighbors. As the new guy on the block, I was welcome too. The thought crossed my mind to mention Jack in the basement, but as soon as I was about to say something, I realized it was better to keep my mouth shut. Not exactly the best first impression to say, "Oh, by the way, I've got a half-naked man coming out of my basement wall." I'd sound like a lunatic, or a killer, or both. So I just accepted the invitation and said I'd bring something as a gift. As soon as the neighbor left, I rushed back downstairs, and thank God I hadn't said a word about Jack. His right arm was still only visible up to the shoulder, but the left was now out to the top of the elbow. His left leg was fully free, and the right had emerged up to mid-thigh. His hips were beginning to show through the wall, and yes, so was his penis. I was completely shocked. A naked man was crawling out of my basement wall. What the actual fuck was going on? No matter how hard I tried to stay in the basement all afternoon, there were things that eventually forced me to go upstairs. One of them was a bathroom break, but I tried to take care of everything all at once. After using the toilet, I quickly made myself some dinner, and of course, in my rush, I managed to cut my finger. So I had to deal with that too. But at least, it gave me an idea. I brought water and dinner down with me, and, embarrassing as it is, I also brought a bucket to, do my business in. I was worried Jack might come through while I wasn't there. I also brought down a pair of pants. They were the same old ones I used when painting the house. Now I figured Jack could wear them, since his lower half was already fully exposed, and staring at a naked man wasn't exactly comfortable. Once I had all that sorted, I followed through on my idea. I had brought the kitchen knife with me, the one I'd used to slice tomatoes for dinner. I wanted to check if Jack was really human. I grabbed his right hand and gently cut into it with the knife. I didn't go deep. If he was just a regular guy, I didn't want to seriously hurt him. But there was no blood. Not a drop came out of his skin. "Jack, what the hell are you?" I backed away from the body sticking out of my wall. Jack just flailed his arms. He scrawled something on the paper. "I'm human. I haven't hurt anyone. I don't deserve this." I didn't know who or what to believe. But one thing was clear. The knife was staying with me, and I wasn't taking my eyes off him. Unfortunately, the bucket turned out to be a bad idea. By evening, I had to use it twice. Because of that, the basement started to stink pretty badly. It wasn't exactly pleasant to sit around in that kind of smell. I ran upstairs, emptied the bucket, and used the toilet again. I did it as fast as I could. But even so, when I came back down, I was shocked. Jack was almost completely out of the wall. Only his shoulders and everything above them, his neck and entire head, were still stuck inside. The old paint-stained pants I had put on him had slipped off, because Jack was shorter and slimmer than me. So once again he stood there completely naked, like some twisted mannequin. The sight always horrified me whenever I came downstairs. I quickly pulled the pants back up on him, at least to cover his lower half. And once again the doubts began to gnaw at me. Jack looked like a completely normal man. True, I still hadn't seen his face, but his body looked like that of an average man in his 30s. Still, the suspicion lingered. Why didn't he bleed? How did he get into my wall? I decided I wouldn't go back upstairs for a while. I was going to stay there, really wait until Jack came out of the wall. The evening dragged on. It got harder and harder to stay awake. I didn't even want to move from my chair. I just stared at the headless body hanging from my wall until sleep finally overtook me. I woke up with a start, like someone who'd overslept and missed their alarm. But what really shocked me, Jack was gone. There was no body hanging from the wall, and worse, the basement door was wide open. I climbed up from the basement cautiously. I held the knife in front of me, gripping it tightly. Whatever this was, if Jack tried to attack me, I would defend myself. But nothing like that happened. The hallway was empty. The bathroom seemed empty, too. It was in the kitchen where the surprise awaited me. A bald man was standing by the window in my half-finished kitchen. He was looking out, his back turned to me. He was wearing the paint-stained pants. It was Jack. "I see you made it out, Jack," I said to him, still gripping the knife tightly, ready to strike. Jack didn't answer. He just kept staring out the window, looking into my backyard with his back to me. "If you need help, we can call someone. Or, I don't know," I continued, still trying to sound diplomatic. "They told me no one would be here," Jack said, suddenly. His voice was calm, kind, and polite. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "I'm sorry," Jack said, emotionlessly. "No one can know where I came from." Then, without warning, Jack turned around and grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. I just stood there, stunned, because Jack had no face. His head was just a smooth, pale surface, no features, no mouth, no eyes, like a freshly painted wall. I barely managed to dodge when I snapped out of it. Jack charged at me again, but this time, I didn't just stand there. I swung my knife and slashed his arm. It cut in, but it was like he didn't even feel it. There was no blood, not a single drop. Still, Jack didn't hold back either. As my knife was lodged in his arm, he grabbed his own knife and stabbed me in the side. I let out a scream of pain. But this thing, it didn't stop. He ripped the knife out of my side and came at me again. I tried to defend myself, with mixed success. He slashed my face, deep, from my eye to just above my ear. When I lifted my arm to protect myself, he stabbed into that instead. I screamed again and pushed him away with all my strength. Jack pulled the knife out of my arm and then slashed me across the stomach, lengthwise. At that point, I was bleeding from almost everywhere. I realized I had to run somehow. Jack wasn't human. Shoving him, punching him, stabbing him, it didn't do anything. I tried to get out of the house, but the stabbing made it hard to move. I collapsed between the kitchen counter and the sink. Jack stood over me. That strange, faceless head stared right at me. His body was covered in blood, my blood. I thought it was over. This thing was going to kill me. Then I heard someone knocking at the door. "Neighbor, are you okay? What's all that yelling? Do you need help?" It was a man's voice. The neighbor who'd invited me to the garden party. I silently thanked whatever powers existed that he heard me screaming. But Jack didn't wait. He plunged the knife into me again. I tried to fight back, but the strength behind that blow was inhuman. He stabbed me in the gut. I screamed again, and that's when the neighbor broke down the door. Jack, like a thief caught in the act, ran. Just before I passed out, I saw him crash through the glass door to the backyard and sprint away into the night. Then everything went black. The doctors said I was incredibly lucky. If my neighbor had found me just a little later, or hadn't called the ambulance right away, I would have bled to death right there. I didn't tell the police anything. I said the attacker was wearing a mask, that I couldn't see who it was. it was better this way. They never would have believed me, that a faceless man who climbed out of my basement wall had stabbed me. I thought a lot about what Jack said while I was recovering. I had plenty of time. It took me over half a year to recover from my injuries. Who told Jack that no one would be in that house? And where did he even come from? I had a lot of questions, but one thing I was sure of. If Jack ever came back, or if someone else ever came into our world through my wall, I wouldn't be so useless next time. I wouldn't be caught off guard again. Story number 3. When I was a kid, Grandma's house was my favorite place. Cheap blue linoleum peeling at the corners, garish floral wallpaper in delicate pinks, the soft tick-tick of a cat clock, its tail swinging to the seconds. I went to a friend's grandma's once, and that smelled of menthols and hot dogs, so I was grateful for mine. She seemed grateful for me, too. Mom and Dad worked a lot, so I was dropped off pretty frequently. We were close. One of our favorite activities was to clean the collectibles. She had a whole set of figurines ordered meticulously in a fancy display case of wood and glass. I never seen tiny statues with such realistic detail. A small brown dog in the middle of scratching his ear. A teenager dressed in a pizza delivery outfit, holding 3 boxes in his arms. A small yellow bird, wings half extended in flight. There were historical figurines, too. A woman with long braids from the 60s. A farmer still dressed in early 1900s overalls. And my favorite, a king with a magnificent robe billowing behind him. I once asked her who the sculptor was with such talent, but she only smiled and patted my head. The years went by, and while I got older, Grandma seemed timeless. I started wearing baggy pants and knee-high socks. I mastered the flute well enough to be second chair and managed a decent enough SAT score to attend a local public university. But I still went over to her house 3 times a week, studying in that warm, sunny kitchen to the tick-tick-tick of the cat clock's tail. I would type on my computer, and she would drink her coffee, and we'd sit in comfortable silence. But like most change, that all came to an abrupt halt on the most boring of days. Like many college students, I had a clunker car, and that Tuesday it would not start. This was a fairly frequent occurrence, and I had the bus schedule memorized, so I wrote it to the closest stop to her house, and I walked 1.5 miles from the bus stop. To this day, I will never understand. It was Tuesday. It was 3 in the afternoon. The sun was shining. There was no reason for something bad to happen. The neighborhood was decent. I'd seen a few people watering their lawns, but all of that couldn't help me. Something bad happened to me. I don't want to talk about it. Afterwards, I finished walking to Grandma's in a confused state. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it and saw me, the smile on her lips slipped away. She knew. That Tuesday, that honest Tuesday, when I stepped through the door, something changed. There was electricity in the air, a sweet, sharp hum, and it vibrated around me. I could feel it pushing away the fog, replacing my fear with anger. My grandma took me into her arms. A deep, warm hug. She whispered only 2 words. "It's time." I felt a tingling sensation in my scalp, slow at first, but intensifying. I could feel something sliding out. I could hear tendrils softly scraping against each other, vibrating, ready to defend. My grandmother whispered, "No one will ever hurt you again." Story number 4. Piss-poor weather tosses my hair about. Reeks of salty seaweed in from everywhere at once. Looks like I'm standing in front of Mount Doom, except it's mohair cliffs. A big pile of mud-brown, bloody red rock sticking straight into the morning. Emerald is way too bright. Waves are smashing themselves to bits beneath. Should be beautiful, but he's there, kneeling, weeping away. His crybaby tears dripping down onto the stone. He whines, "What now? I'm gonna die." The sound of his voice making my ears hurt. "I don't want to die." He whimpers. "Then you should have thought your head off before giving those withered slaps of critical reviews." I howl, my voice ricocheting off the granite cliffs. "You went and destroyed honest lives just because of your own pettiness." He looks up at me through bleary eyes. "I just wanted good service." "Took more time than they promised," he spits back, disgustingly defiant even now. "And they had parsley in that pasta. I hate parsley." It wasn't even 5 minutes, the waiter confirmed when I investigated. I snap, my patience wearing thin. "But it wasn't just me who gave all the negative reviews," he says. "Don't even get me started on the others who chimed in." I growl, spittle flying from my lips. A bunch of scum, every last one of them. Never even darkened the door of that restaurant, but they had to stick their noses in, didn't they? I let out a laugh. "Oh, and I'll get to them. Don't you worry. This whole mess has got to be cut out, root and branch." Then I lean in close. "So do the decent thing, you small shite. Jump. Save us all the trouble." But he just stands there, blubbering. "I can't." He whimpers, his face a mess of terror. I shake my head, disgusted. "Pathetic," I mutter, a toxic bile churning in my belly. "I knew you'd be a gutless bastard till the very end. It was a given. But still, I thought you'd maybe take some accountability for once in your pathetic excuse for a life. No point dragging this out. Just get it over with." I whip out the gun, pressing the cold steel against his temple. His face twists in pure horror as I pull the trigger. Finito. 2 hours later, I'm parked outside this house. I ring the bell. Woman opens up, looking as if she's been through the ringer. And this bloke behind her, he's a wreck. Eyes like 2 potholes. No sleep for days, probably weeks. They're staring at me, all trepidation and desperation. It's done. Contract fulfilled, I tell them, and their faces just melt, tears streaming down. "Oh, thank fuck," the bloke croaks. "We thought this day would never come." The woman is blubbering, her tears flowing. "We truly believed he'd destroy our lives forever. They invite me in. Never seen them before, face to face. Till the deed's done, I keep it impersonal. They show me round, and in the kitchen, there's this notice board covered in scribbled daily meal ratings, all 1 star out of 5. Whatever I cooked, it never pleased him. The woman whispers, "Always negative, always." She's trembling. "It's all over now," I say, meeting her gaze. "You can live freely and happily. No more of his tyrannical bullshit. The world's a better place, believe me." The bloke's jaw clenches, his eyes darting around. I'm conflicted. All right, he was our son, for fuck's sake. His voice cracks. How many times did we beg him to get a job? Move out? 35 and still living off his parents? It's unnatural. I cut in, my tone firm. Don't go beating yourself up, mate. You did the right thing. He gives a little nod, but his eyeballs are still tranced out to some abyss of anguish. His missus is still staring at the notice board. Her mug, set in a mask of heartache. I grab the eraser and start wiping out those scathing reviews, one at a time. Her eyes start watering up again, and I can see the pain ripple across them. Trying to steer the conversation away from the agony of the past, I say, "Why don't you whip up some of that herbal infusion of yours? I heard it's top-notch." She perks up a bit, a wistful smile playing on her lips. "Sure thing," she says, heading for the cupboards. As she moves, I notice a glimmer of sadness in her eyes again. "He gave my infusion 1 star, called it abysmal," her husband chimes in, a hint of cheer now creeping into his voice. "No more of that negativity, eh?" And he winks at me. We all laugh. A hearty, genuine sound that rips through the house, finally banishing the shadows of his poisonous presence. Story number 5. Who among you honestly didn't hide from monsters under the bed sheets when you were a child? I did. I swear I saw them, but even when I screamed, no help came. Just got a shriek back from my parents and a smack across the chops for disturbing them. So I watched the shapes in the night lurk and hid out of sight, waiting for the dawn. After a while, they didn't seem so bad. I stopped screaming. The bruises Mom and Dad left just healed, but still I saw the shapes of the monsters. No one told me why I shouldn't be afraid. I was maybe 8 or 9 when the thing came along. My room was on the ground floor next to the patio Dad had laid. I heard the scrape of the wooden table and chairs on the concrete slabs. Something settled down with a rattled breaths, and I could feel its gaze fixed on me through the closed curtains. Its glassy eyes met mine as I peeked through the curtains, its flesh too loose to make expressions. "Good evening," it breathed. "How was your day?" I said nothing. I made no more sound. "It's okay. I know how it feels if you're not ready." I stared at the thing for a while. It sat, cross-legged, covered in gray rags, gaunt with barely any muscle left, with white flowing hair down to its neck. Knowing it wouldn't move, I went back to bed and listened to the breathing all night. I also knew I better not tell anyone about it. Over the next week, I heard it every night. Breathing and unchanging, it sat on the table, always staring at me. "How was your day? It's okay if you're not ready." On the 7th day, I said hello. I told the thing I was scared of it, that it looked bad. It was ruining my sleep, and it was making school hard. That will pass. I just have nowhere else to be, and I just think, no one listens anymore. The breathing slowed. "But thank you for telling me. I'll see if you can sleep now." It uncrossed its legs and stepped off the table. The thing was taller than I expected and was gone in a few strides. The thing was back the following night, but this time the fear wasn't the same. "How did you know how I'd feel better? How did you know I wouldn't run away?" I asked it. "I've been just where you are now," it replied. "Tell me about your day." And so, night after night, I did. Countless days went by as the thing told me things I needed to hear. The monsters are there. You can see them, can't you? It breathed. You just need to stand up to those monsters. You don't need to be afraid. I told the thing that I was scared what the monsters would do to me if I left my bed. I won't let them hurt you. The thing replied, "I haven't let them yet, have I?" The thing was right. The following night, the monsters came back as usual. This time, though, the thing stayed away. I knew I had to take back control. I threw off the covers and darted to the light switch. They were gone, as if they'd never been there at all, and my room looked the way I always wanted it to. I barely heard him stomp down the corridor as I took in my victory, until the door swung open and smacked the back of my head. Something picked me up by the hair and pulled me upwards. The pain seared on my scalp, and through the tears I saw my dad pull back his fist and fire a punch into my stomach. Sickness spread through my abdomen. I felt the need to vomit, but held it in. "Do you know what we do for you?" he shouted. "There'll be no food on the table if Mum and Dad can't get up in the morning." I couldn't hold the vomit anymore. It sprayed out on the rug as I tried to keep it behind my lips. He told me to clean it up. Quietly, he emphasized as he switched off the light. I could tell the creature was watching me through every window as I moved around the house at night, hunting for carpet cleaner in the dark. It felt everything I did. The gasped back tears, the bilious feeling in my belly, and the forming bruise on my skin. "There's something you're not telling me," it said the following night. I wasn't sleeping anyway. The bruising made it painful to lay the way I usually do. That night I let the thing talk. "It's okay," it said. "I've seen it for myself now. There are things that push you down. Here, stop you being what you're supposed to be." It continued. "It might hurt now, but where are the monsters now?" The thing was right. Any shapes on the ceiling were just shadows from the trees outside. "Tomorrow you're going to do something for me. You're going to make someone else feel the way you do now. You're going to see how strong you are." It didn't take me long to figure out what I'd do. There was a boy from the year below. He played alone and didn't seem to know anyone too well. But every break time at school, he'd disappear somewhere. I was going to find out where. My plan was straightforward. I'd be kept in by the teacher that day. All I did was grab the whiteboard eraser at the start of the lesson and held it under the table until the teacher needed it. Then as soon as they did, I hurled the thing at the board, missing their head by a foot or so. The classroom roared with laughter. The teacher didn't seem to know what to do. It was kind of weird, I guessed. But I had my wish. I watched the boy walk to the school fields with everyone else before he peeled off and walked just to the edge of the school grounds. It wasn't clear whether he was even supposed to be there. No one was watching or bothered him but me, as he climbed halfway up the old windmill on the grounds and jumped behind an old stone wall. He did the same thing at lunchtime. Difference was he had an unexpected visitor. The boy was crouched down when I perched on the stone wall from above. I jumped down at him, kicking him in the back of the head and shoving him to the floor. Now I was kicking his stomach. I struck 2 or 3 more times until the cries came out. He barely saw me through his tears. I'd been smart. No visible bruises. No one said a word to me the rest of the day. The thing looked different that night. Meatier, stronger, but friendlier. I, on the other hand, felt different. You know how it feels now. It said, the lips had grown now, and its teeth were whitening. Tomorrow you'll do what I've done for you. Then there's one last favor I have to give. I didn't expect the boy to head back to his spot. My mom told me I didn't look great, so told me to stay home that day. But of course she didn't bother to stay home and check on me. So, it wasn't too hard to sneak back to the windmill and wait just out of view. The boy came back anyway. I gave him a few moments to settle himself before I asked him, "Why did you come back?" He was silent at first, so I gave him an olive branch. "It was me that hurt you yesterday. I won't do it again if you tell me why you're here. It's easier to do what I want to do here," he said sheepishly. The boy decided to look behind the stone wall. "You don't look great," he told me. I smiled back at him. "I feel fine." I listened to the boy for the rest of the hour before he asked, "Will you be back tomorrow?" I was happy to make the promise. The thing had changed clothes that night. A suit and tie covered most of his skin, and color had returned to his hair. "Thank you for the favor. Now I the one I promised. Do you know where to find a screwdriver?" I nodded. "Do you know where the boiler is?" I nodded again. "Well, I'd like you to take that screwdriver and jam it in every hole on the boiler you can find. Keep going until you hear it hiss." "Won't that wake my parents?" I asked the thing. It shook its head. "I'll make sure it doesn't." I found the thing easily enough, but I didn't get what I was supposed to do with it. The screwdriver didn't really do much when I poked at it until I decided to take the panels off. A few blue rubber pipes let out a hiss with just a few jabs. The house was silent now. I expected my parents to still be up or come running for me at any moment. But there was nothing. Their door was even open, and I could see them lying together, motionless. The thing was stood by my window when I came back to my room. With a twist of its hand, the handle turned on my side, and he pulled. It opened. It was leaning in now. "Where would you like to go?" The thing asked me. "I'd like to wait by the windmill, if that's okay." The thing nodded at me, reaching out its hand. Its hair was full now, its eyes a deep brown. I reached out and felt warmth in its paper-thin skin as I looked at his full lips and white teeth. He looked almost charming. Story number 6. I linger in the corners of this house, unseen, a breath of cold in a world too warm. I've watched its walls age, its floors creak under new feet, its memories twist in the minds of the living. Time means little to me now, but I remember the night it all unraveled. September, the air thick with storm, or maybe just silence. The details blur, even for me, a ghost who sees too much. The boy was 10. His name escapes me, but his face, sharp, pale, wide-eyed, burns clear. I watched him wake at 5:30 a.m., or perhaps 5:03. The clock's face was a fleeting anchor in the dark. He slipped from his bed, chasing the promise of cookies, his small feet padding toward the kitchen. The house held its breath, as it always did when something was about to break. I drifted behind him, a shadow among shadows, tethered to this place by a force I cannot name. The hallway stretched long and heavy, the air pressing against my formless edges. Then came the sound. A doorknob's slow, deliberate twist. I felt it before I heard it, a ripple in the stillness. The boy froze. I hovered closer, drawn to his quickening pulse. And then he saw it. Not me, but him. A figure cloaked in smoke and shadow. Human in outline, but wrong, so wrong. Its eyes glowed white, featureless, yet they held the boy like a vice. I saw them, too, those eyes, and they stirred something in me. A memory of a memory, a life I no longer claim. The boy screamed, a sound that tore through the house and through me. The figure flinched, startled, as if it hadn't expected to be seen. Footsteps pounded. His father, charging from the bedroom, his mother's voice trailing in panic. The shadow fled, bursting through the front door into the woods beyond. I followed, gliding over the earth, watching it dissolve into the night. Not a burglar, as the father would later claim. Something else. Something that felt like a wound. In time, I stayed with the boy as the years passed. His memory of that night warped, frayed at the edges. He questioned the smell, the sounds, the shape of the thing. But those eyes, those bright white voids, clung to him, unyielding. I saw him carry them into adulthood, a weight he couldn't name. Then came the old woman. I watched her fall on the sidewalk, her frailty a performance. The boy, grown now, helped her up. Her smile was too sharp, her eyes too old. She spoke of a reward, his deepest desire. I tried to scream, to warn him, but my voice is only air. Her hand closed over his, and she whispered something that made the world shudder. The living don't feel it, but I did. A crack in the fabric of things. He vanished, not into darkness, but into nothing. I felt the house groan, as if it knew what was coming. When he returned, he stood in the old house on the bathroom floor. The mirror fogged. It was that night again. I watched him step into the hallway, his body no longer his own. He was smoke and shadow now, his eyes white and endless. He saw the boy, himself, 10 years old, trembling in the dark. The boy's scream split the air, and I saw the man stagger, caught in the echo of his own terror. His father's voice roared, footsteps thundering. The man ran, crashing through the door into the woods, branches clawing at him. I followed, my form flickering in the wind. He collapsed against a tree, sobbing, shaking, his truth breaking open like a wound. He was the shadow, the intruder, the eyes, the demon he'd feared all his life. I watched him realize it, his mind folding under the weight. Maybe he was haunted, maybe he was mad, maybe time had betrayed him, looping until he was both hunter and prey. Linger, still, in this house, watching the boy who became the demon. I see him in every shadow, every creak, every moment where the past and present collide. He was the architect of his own ruin, and I, the silent witness, can only watch as the story repeats endless and unbroken. Story number 7. It wasn't always this way. When I adopted Gerald as a kitten, he acclimated to my little one-bedroom duplex right away. Not a trace of timidity. He's about 1 year old now, a sleek orange tabby with white paws who gets into more trouble than I can manage. I've caught him climbing curtains, knocking over glasses of water, and sending embarrassing keyboard smash messages to my co-workers by napping on my open laptop. Normal, well-adjusted cat behavior. This week, he started to avoid me. I first noticed it at mealtimes. When I filled his dish on Monday morning, I was met with an empty kitchen. Gerald is usually a demanding little fellow, yowling and circling my legs all the way to the kitchen. I figured maybe he was still napping somewhere else in the house. When I checked later that evening, the bowl was empty. But once again, he did not come running when I refilled the dish. So this became our routine. I just scooped his portion, gave the bowl a shake to rattle the pellets around, and made myself scarce. It wasn't until I left the room that he would creep out of hiding and begin eating. I was glad to know he wasn't starving, at least, but I can't say I wasn't a little hurt. Next, I noticed how he acted around me. Before things changed, he would make himself at home on my lap every time I sat down to do some computer work or watch TV, rubbing his cheek against my face. It was almost irritating how affectionate that cat was. I miss it now. Starting that fateful Monday, whenever I'd entered a room, Gerald acted like some foreign threat had just entered the house. Fur spiked, back arched. He would creep away at an angle so as to keep me in his sight. Once I tried to coax him out of his sudden terror with a handful of treats. As soon as I got within a foot of him, a low growl rose in his throat. He bolted into the next room, where I found him perched at the top of his cat tree, just out of my reach. He stayed up there for the rest of the night. I only heard him bumping around the house again once I'd gone to bed. I work as a university professor, so I'm usually gone for most of the day. If I know I'll be staying late to finish some grading or hold office hours, I'll often call up my sister, who I'll refer to as Laura, to ask if she or one of my nephews can drive over to check on Gerald. He's still an adolescent and full of energy. I worry about him getting bored and stir-crazy when he's alone for too long. On Tuesday, I had back-to-back meetings after class, followed by a mountain of essays to grade. It was going to be a long day. So I called up Laura in the morning. She agreed without hesitation. "Don't stay too late tonight," she added. "You need to rest more, Cam." She was probably right. I hadn't been sleeping well recently. I had been suffering from vivid nightmares and sleep paralysis at some point, almost every night. A horrible compressing sensation would start in my chest and crawl up my throat. I'd wake up gasping for air. At the time, I chalked it up to a recent breakup and the stress of preparing my students for exam season. I was about to hang up when I remembered how strange Gerald had been acting. "By the way, Gerald's been kinda skittish recently," I added, as I locked up the house and got into my car. "Don't be offended if he doesn't come out right away. Anyway, spare keys in the usual place. Let yourself in." I thanked her again and headed to work. Later that evening, just as I was leaving my last meeting, I noticed a new voicemail. It was from Laura. She sounded chipper as always, but I could tell she was choosing her words very carefully. I know my sister. Something was off. "Hey, Cammy, just calling to say that the kitty's doing fine. The boys and I stopped by after school to play with him. He's such a joy. I wanted to ask something. Did you happen to stop by the house before your meetings today? We saw someone leaving out the back door as we were pulling up, but your car wasn't in the driveway. It's probably nothing, but I thought I'd ask. Have a good night." I felt a pang of anxiety in my chest. I hadn't been home since the morning. It could have been a delivery driver, but I wasn't expecting any packages. Maybe she'd seen my neighbor leaving their side of the duplex and mistaken it for mine. Laura hadn't mentioned anything being amiss inside, so it couldn't have been a burglar. I tried to convince myself of this, but the tension didn't leave my shoulders as I finished out the day and drove home. When I pulled into my driveway, all the lights were on inside. The kids probably forgot to turn them off when they left, I thought. I was still on edge. I crept up to the door slowly, listening for activity on the other side. I didn't hear anything at all. The quiet did nothing to comfort me. Usually Gerald would hear the rumble of my car and rush to the door or window to greet me on my way in. I was reaching for my keys when I heard it. A rattling. Good, I thought at first. Gerald is eating something. But it was too purposeful to be a cat pushing pellets around. It was gentle, precise. A light shake. Shake, followed by silence. Then it would repeat. Someone was rattling my cat's food dish. As quietly as I could manage, I put my keys down and crept over to the kitchen window. The curtains obscured most of my view, but through the sliver in between I could see a person standing there on the tiles, mostly turned away. As I suspected, they were hunched forward, holding out the metal cat, dish, and gently shaking it too as to coax the cat out of hiding. Gerald was huddled in the corner of the kitchen, frozen in place. The stranger was barefoot, with long matted hair that hung down their back in tangled clumps, so that then I noticed what they were wearing. They had on nondescript gray sweatpants, the kind I only wear when I have nowhere else to be. At first glance, their shirt was just a plain purple tee, but reading the bold white text on the back, my stomach dropped. It was my last name. That was my game shirt from last year's staff kickball tournament. The stranger in my kitchen was wearing my clothes. I sank down beneath the windowsill and dialed 911. I ran back to my car, locking myself inside as I waited for the operator to pick up. 911, what's your emergency? The woman on the line answered. There's someone in my house, I whispered, my throat closing up. Looking back, I should have thought to drive away at that point. But the truth is, I was more terrified for Gerald than myself. My cat was stuck in there with whoever was inside, and I had no idea what their intentions were. Ma'am, can you speak up? I managed to get my breathing under control. There's a stranger in my house, I said, keeping my voice low. Someone broke in. I stayed on the line for a few more minutes to give my address. As the responder took down my information, I felt a sickening sense of guilt. Gerald was still in there. I couldn't leave without him. Against all better judgment, I left my vehicle. I took a rusty shovel from the yard and approached the door, climbing the steps as silently as I could. I needed the element of surprise. Steeling myself, I kicked the door in, brandishing the shovel in front of me. The intruder did not flinch. They stood up straight, swaying unsteadily, and turned towards me. I couldn't help but think that they moved like a baby deer, legs wobbling, each step as slow and measured as if it was their first. As they twisted their head in my direction, I finally caught sight of their face. I saw me. I don't know how else to say it. The stranger wore my face. The same nose, same dark brows and thin lips. Even the small port wine stain on her, or my, left cheek. The woman's eyes were wider and shinier than mine, though, holding a blank, inscrutable expression I have only seen on prey animals or very young infants. For a split moment, I think I felt something like pity for this wretched creature. She looked so lost, and yet so viscerally, evolutionarily wrong. She opened her mouth as she saw me. She made a noise, something between a cry and a shout, a half-formed word meant for me. As she wailed, black bile dribbled down her chin. Then, all at once, she lurched towards me, hand outstretched, and grabbed my face. I felt searing pain as her long, unkempt nails dug into the skin of my cheek, puncturing it and dragging. I don't know what came over me then. Perhaps some long-dormant survival instinct or panic response. All I can remember thinking is that this thing was not human, and that it needed to get as far away from me as possible. I slammed the shovel into her chest with a sickening crack, yelling nonsense the way one yells at a bear to spook it from a campsite. Black bile splattered against my face and neck, and the kitchen floor as I shoved her back. She wrestled with me, howling, trying to tear the shovel away. As she struggled, I could see an animalistic sort of fear well up within her glassy eyes. Then, as soon as she'd entered my life, the woman who wore my face turned and scampered from my home like a spurned animal, leaving the door swinging wide. I stumbled outside just in time to watch her clamber over the chain-link fence, disappearing into the dark. After I was sure she had gone, I went inside to check on Gerald. He appeared, unharmed, washing his paw casually, as if nothing had happened at all. That is, until I got too close. He still doesn't trust me, I can tell. With great difficulty, I managed to get him into his cat carrier. Then I slapped a bandage over my bleeding cheek, threw a toothbrush and some clothes into grabbed Gerald's carrier, and left for my sister's place across town. Despite the short notice, Laura set up their fold-out couch for me as soon as I explained my night from hell. I even told her about the face. Though she didn't say a thing to discredit my story, I can tell that she thinks my interpretation of events is altered by stress and lack of sleep. I appreciate her listening anyway. She helped to examine and dress the wound on my left cheek, a gash just above my birthmark. It was deep, still oozing, and hurt like hell. My assailant would have taken a whole half of my face if I hadn't warded her off in time. I'm sure of it. As for the stranger, I know she's out there somewhere. When the cops finally showed up at my home, though, they didn't find a thing. No trace of foreign DNA in my home. No tracks or damage left behind. This whole situation makes me feel crazy. I haven't been back since. I know I'll have to return eventually to collect my things. Until then, I've called in sick from work for the next few days to get my head on straight. I'm posting my story to this forum as a vent, I guess. A way to get it out of my system. No one else believes me, but why would they? I can't think of a single rational explanation for what I saw that day. And as for Gerald, I've tried to make peace with him again. I stocked up on his favorite wet food, switched out his toys, and even bought some fresh catnip. The other day he came close enough to sniff my hand. I'll call that a win. Otherwise, he's the same lovable ball of energy as always. He loves playing with Laura's kids and even the family dog. Still, the fact remains, my cat is afraid of me. Story number 8. I'm sure at least some people will be able to relate to this. My childhood was odd. At the time, I couldn't see that there was anything wrong with it. I couldn't understand it when things happened that weren't normal. I went to school, had friends, and played games like any other kid. I had loving parents and an annoying sister, just like many other kids my age did. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles would often visit. I didn't like when my grandmother came. She was a strict woman, and honestly, she scared me. I can remember vividly one summer she came over. She looked my sister and I up and down, then turned to my father and asked, "What about the other one? I thought you said get it over with and end this farce." He pulled her aside and told my sister and I to go play outside. She left that night and never came to visit again. There were so many things that I never learned should be questioned. I never comprehended that they were something I should question. Most of them felt small at the time. We had a picture of our family tree in our hallway, a long line of sibling pairs as far back as anyone remembered. And yet, by each of them was space for a third. My mother would bring in extra groceries every trip, and sometimes set an extra plate at dinner. then quietly put it away again. But there was one rule that we were never to break. We weren't allowed to speak at home. Rather, we weren't allowed to raise our voices above a whisper. Whether in anger, laughter, or even by accident, loudness in general was treated as taboo as soon as we set foot on the driveway. On the few occasions we raised our voices, our fathers, anger always fell hardest on me. My sister cried, but she was spared. I didn't understand why my mother never comforted either of us until much later, and it cost me far more than I would have been willing to trade. I really want to emphasize that this was always the norm to me. I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't know I should be worried or scared. Despite this, like I mentioned earlier, I did have a good childhood. My parents truly loved us both, and it was rare that we got into trouble. I had a lot of friends at school, and I'd often spend the majority of my day at one of their houses, playing PS2 or taking advantage of their trampoline, which I had always been envious of. My dad didn't like it. Anytime I wanted to get permission for a playdate or a sleepover, I would ask my mom. This would be followed by tense, coarse whispers between the two of them in their room. Sometimes they'd let me, other times not. Hindsight truly is a taunting thing. I can't tell you how many nights I've spent laying awake, wishing my dad had won those hushed arguments. I wish to myself as I toss and turn that I hadn't been born to my parents, that I hadn't been born at all. But even more vicious than hindsight is the past itself. It stands with absolute resoluteness. It is unchangeable and unforgettable, a wound that never heals until the day the afflicted passes away. Siblings are supposed to be mean to each other when they're young. It's part of how they grow up, how they learn social skills. So when my friend suggested that we scare my sister during a sleepover, I was immediately on board. I wasn't allowed to have friends over at our house, but I told them I could record it all and show them the next day. I was beyond excited to have something to rub in my sister's face. She was the eldest, and I wanted to get the upper hand on her for once. As any little girl would, she screamed when she saw the rubber snake under her pillow. It wasn't a long scream. She covered her mouth with her hands almost as soon as it left her lips. But it was enough. There was a moment of silence right after she screamed that felt never-ending. Then my parents ran into the room. They saw her, mouth still covered and eyes wide with terror. Then the toy snake on her bed. My father cursed under his breath before scooping up my sister into his arms. My mother looked like she was going to cry. Her eyes darted down even before the noises began. Scratching. Something was scratching the wooden floor underneath our feet. Light at first, soft, almost as if it was asking to be let in politely, then louder, louder and louder, until it was violently clawing away the wood like tissue paper. The boards bent first, bowing upward as if the house itself were breathing. Then they split, splinters flying, and something began to crawl through. When my father saw what had emerged from below our feet, he set my sister down and stepped away. All he said was, "I'm sorry." He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound afraid. Just tired, like he'd been waiting for this as if he had expected it. It was small. We had raccoons in our backyard that my sister and I would try to catch at that moment. That's the only size comparison that I could think of. It crawled on its hands and knees, bloated and red as if its skin was being pulled taut over too much of its own body. A putrid, fleshy cord dangled over its shoulders, coiling around its neck before disappearing into its own swollen belly. How could something so sickly, so small, be so strong? Its eyes locked onto my sister, and I jumped between the two. My mother cried out, "No!" Before either of my parents could move, the rotten child seized my ankle and hurled me across the room as if I were a toy soldier. I hit the wall, and my mom came to pick me up, both shielding and restraining me. But even if I had broken free, it wouldn't have mattered. In seconds, it had her. My sister's nails scraped across the floorboards, her muffled cry cut short as the thing dragged her into the hole below. I heard her scream again, but this time, it wasn't her hands that silenced it. The sound of flesh being torn from sinew, ligaments snapping, bones breaking. Then her voice called again, "Mom, Dad." It pulled itself back up from the darkness. The sight of it now forced me to vomit on the floor. It was bigger, but wrong. Its arms and legs were uneven, its hands a clutter of mismatched fingers, as though it had been playing with bones the way a child plays with toys, jamming them into place, trying to look like my sister. Patches of her brown hair sprouted from swollen red skin, clumps of it slick with blood. Her white teeth were crammed into its gray gums, sharp and uneven, like butcher knives buried in raw meat. But worst of all were the eyes. They were her eyes. I could still see the fear they held only moments ago. The betrayal and terror she had experienced. My father scooped my sister up in his arms and carried her out of the room. I could hear her monstrous, joyful cries as she tried to use her new, stolen voice. The rest of my childhood was spent pretending the monster had always been my sister, pretending that her laugh was hers, that her smile was hers, was punished more harshly for mistreating her than I ever was for breaking the rule of silence. I moved out when I turned 16 and continued my game of pretend. I pretended my childhood never happened, that I was a normal man with a normal past and a normal family. Only one thing brings me comfort now. No matter how much my parents beg and plead and yell and berate, I will never have children. This ends with me, and it ends with her. Story number 9. When I was young, my grandfather never talked much about the war. He lived a quiet life, smoked his pipe every evening, and only ever raised his voice when I left the door open and let the mosquitoes in. But sometimes, late at night, when he'd had a few too many sips of sake, he'd tell me pieces, always pieces, never the whole story. He was in Hiroshima on the morning of August 6th, 1945. Not a soldier, not even a worker, just a boy delivering rice for his father's shop. He told me he saw the flash. He never called it an explosion, always the flash. He said it was like the sun had landed on Earth. A second sun, brighter than anything, and hotter than a god could bear. The flash blinded him. He woke hours later, lying in the street. His skin was burned raw, blistering, but he was alive. That fact haunted him until the day he died. When he stumbled through the ruins, he said the city wasn't destroyed. It was peeled open. Buildings split in half, walls melted, steel sagging like wax. People walked around with their faces sliding off their skulls, skin dripping from their arms like candle wax. He told me he saw a woman clutching a baby so tightly the baby's head had fused to her chest from the heat. He stopped telling me details after that. But one night, just one, he told me what scared him the most. Not the fire, not the burns, not even the sickness. He said when night came, the city didn't stay quiet. He heard people screaming, crying for water. That part everyone knows. But he said some of the voices weren't human anymore. They were burned too much. He whispered. Their mouths melted shut, their lungs cooked, but still, they made noise. Not screaming, not talking, just a noise, like a kettle boiling, hundreds of them, all around. He said the noise didn't fade with time, for days after, even when the bodies were gone, even when the city was cleared. He swore he could still hear it at night. That's why, when his family moved back decades later, he refused. He said Hiroshima wasn't a city anymore. It was a grave. A grave so deep it swallowed the voices of the dead and let them out only at night. He made me promise never to visit. He said if I stood there at night, really listened, I'd hear the same sound he did. I used to think it was just trauma. Just the broken memories of a young boy who saw the worst thing imaginable. But last year I broke my promise. I was in Japan, and I went. Just for one night. I stayed near the memorial, and I listened. The city is beautiful now. Lights, food stalls, children laughing. A place rebuilt. A place of peace. But at 2 a.m., when the streets emptied and the night grew heavy, I heard it, not loud, not right away, but faint, like a pot beginning to simmer. Dozens of faint whistles in the dark, some high, some low, all wrong. The sound crawled under my skin. It wasn't just noise, it felt wet. Like steam forcing its way through raw flesh. My stomach turned, and suddenly I understood what my grandfather had meant. These weren't sounds that belonged to the living. They were forced out of bodies that should have been silent. He froze. My heart hammered so violently I thought my ribs would crack. Every hair on my arms rose as if the night air had teeth. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. It was like the ground itself was holding me there, making me listen. And then, underneath the whistling, I heard something else, a dragging sound, slow, sticky, like burned skin peeling off stone. It was faint, but it was moving closer. The memorial park was empty. I'd checked a dozen times before sitting down, but in that moment I knew I wasn't alone. My grandfather had described voices. He hadn't warned me about footsteps. The boiling noises grew sharper, more desperate, as if they sensed me. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside, rattling in my skull. My teeth ached from it. My eyes watered. I stumbled backward, trying not to scream, but I swear I saw movement in the dark. A figure at the edge of the path, charred black, glowing faintly red in the chest, like a coal. Its head tilted at an angle no living neck could manage. The whistles swelled into a chorus, and for one horrific moment, I thought I could hear words inside them. Not clear words, but pleading. A single, endless demand. Water. That broke me. I ran until my lungs were on fire, never daring to look back, the whistles chasing me all the way to my hotel. By the time the sun rose, the city was bustling again. Bright, clean, alive. Tourists walked past me, laughing, completely unaware. It was as if the night had never happened, but I know better. My grandfather was right. Hiroshima isn't a city, it's a grave. And graves don't forget what's buried in them, and if you ever go, don't listen too closely, because once you hear them, you'll never stop. Story number 10. Growing up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, I was no stranger to roaming the woods. Ever since I can remember, I have been out in the woods building forts, or terrorizing the small creek frogs I so desperately wanted to catch. I lived right next to a thick collection of trees, where I spent countless years of my childhood playing pretend with the neighborhood kids or hide and seek in the forest. My favorite part of it all was the animals. I would watch daily from my back porch, and deer, black bears, coyotes, and more roam the woods. Sometimes I would bring out animal feed and place it in an opening. I stole it from my dad's hunting gear. I could barely hold the giant yellow bag when I carried it out to the woods, so I would leave it there for the next time I came to look for the creature. I hide under leaves or a log after spreading the feed over the woods to get up-close glimpses of the beautiful animals. I was inseparable from the nature that surrounded my home. Eventually, the giant missing bag of animal feed was taken, presumably by my dad, who had been interrogating me thoroughly on my childhood antics. The opposite could be said for my girlfriend, June. She was born and raised in the mountains, much like me, but her passion couldn't be further from living in the woods. The classroom always called her, and nothing could stop her from learning as much as she could. She was top of the class throughout high school, and I was lucky enough to experience the last 2 years of it with her. Since the day I got my license in junior year, I was a cocky hot shot at pickup lines. I talked to countless girls, all of whom I should apologize to for asking them to write their numbers down on my arm in the middle of the hallway. Most of these attempts never went anywhere, of course. When I laid eyes on that beautiful, hazel-eyed, curly-haired June, I knew my attempt at talking was going to be like Sisyphus trying to push the boulder of another pickup line up the back of my throat. It took me days to attempt, and when I finally did, I stuttered out the entire thing, making her fall over laughing hysterically. I knew she was the love of my life at that moment, after she finally stopped laughing and wrote her number down on my forearm. Ever since, we have been inseparable. I never knew what she saw in a hick like me, but I wish she were still around to ask her. Things were great. We'd go see every home sports game that involved our poorly designed Ram mascot. She'd help explain the basics of trigonometry to me, and I would take her to my favorite places on Earth, national parks. Of course, between the big events of hiking and sports games, we'd sit on the couch almost every night and watch TV. Sitting there, lying there in her arms, was the greatest feeling in the world. I could have grown old and fat with her right there, and my life would be content. A few months into our nightly routine, A second feeling arose that most of the time was choked out by June's skinny arms. The feeling was one of being watched. We would lie on my old damaged couch, right in front of a wide front window. Whenever the feeling came, I'd look out of it, trying to see if something was watching me back, but the reflection of the TV light always made the window cloudy. Sometimes the feeling got so bad that even June's presence couldn't kill it. I'd always get up and close the front blinds, and whenever June asked why, I always said, for some privacy, before shooting her a smirk and launching a barrage of kisses towards her smooth face. Even during our make-out sessions, the feeling clung to the back of my brain like a parasite. Being in high school, my parents still wanted us to get a reasonable amount of sleep before the next day of class. So our curfew was at 9 p.m. every night. No special treatment for the weekends, to my hormonal dismay. So every night, we'd walk down the back steps to my house, around to the garage, warm up my dad's old pickup, and I would drive June back to her house. Thankfully, I never had those feelings of being watched whenever we walked outside. That was until I first laid my eyes on it, even if I didn't know it. It was about a year into our relationship and 3 months until holiday break, when June and I would go on a skiing trip, something completely foreign to her, yet so exciting to me. I wrapped my jacket around June's petite shoulders and walked her down to the garage. The feeling of being stalked had disappeared for a while, but when I was putting in the code for the garage door, it stabbed into the back of me like a knife. I looked at June, who was scrolling on her phone, seemingly oblivious to the presence watching us. Then I shot my head towards the tree line. The dim motion sensor above the door only illuminated maybe 20 feet in front of it, and the trees were about 250 feet out. The only light there was the light from the full moon ahead, which gave everything a sickly blue and gray cover through the cloudy night. Thick oaks and pines had created a wall of bark, stopping any light that would break through the line. The few glimpses I could get past the trees only resulted in a darkness that filled in the background like a painting. I quickly pressed the code in and got June into the truck. I pulled out a little too fast and got her home quickly. When I pulled back in, I didn't dare attempt to look back out at the woods. I closed the garage door and quickly ran up the back steps. The feeling came back the next night. This time, June felt it too. Again, as I was putting in the code to the door when I felt it, it was like a cold breath down the back of my spine. I turned to see June staring into the woods. "You all right?" I asked, trying not to show any sense of fear in my voice. "Yeah, I just thought I heard a noise," she replied, without breaking her gaze towards the trees. I never heard anything. I only felt the sensation I had the night previous. I stared at her for a moment, studying the tree line. No movement, not even any wind blowing the leaves of the trees. Like clockwork, I quickly put in the code, and we both got in the car. The ride was silent at first. Only the ambiance of a fall night could be heard. I quickly thought up some school drama she might be interested in so that we could both get our minds off the presence plaguing us. It worked, and soon enough we were talking about how the math teacher, Mr. Teague, was selling pot to students in the bathrooms. The notion of being watched slowly drained away. The next night I heard the noise too. The feeling was absent until the sound of a branch snapping. It rang out in the quiet night and echoed in my brain as I jumped around. June was already holding her phone flashlight up, to attempt to see if she could see anything, but its light was too small to make an impact. The moon was still relatively full, giving the tree line an ample amount of light. I squinted, and a new shape had appeared across the tapestry of the forest's edge. I started laughing the second I saw it. The laugh was one of relief and astonishment at my stupidity. June started to nervously chuckle, but was confused about what I had found so funny. "Look right there," I said, as I lowered and pointed towards the outline of a small group of 3-4 deer. June let out a loud, infectious awe as she laid eyes on a mother deer and her baby. We stood and watched the deer for a few minutes as they grazed on the grass right before the forest. I had felt so silly, worrying over nothing. My feeling of anxiety was caused by a few dumb deer. As we watched the deer dinner party, another deer with large antlers walked out from the woods behind the group. I saw him out of the corner of my eye while I was turning around to finish putting in the garage door code. At first, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the buck, but when I turned around to get a better look, he immediately brought back feelings of eyes being glued to me. Even in the dark, I could tell something about this deer was ever so slightly off. It was a little chunkier than the rest, or more muscular. It was hard to tell from the distance we were at. Its lower legs were just a bit thicker than normal, and its head seemed to move on a swivel. Its back half looked like it dropped a bit further than the rest of the deer that surrounded this new one. The back looked like it slinked back and forth, like the hide was swaying on the bones, absent of flesh. It walked like it took a few moments to think about each step it took, and when it did take the step, it walked with a limp. June threw her hands over her mouth and gasped. "Oh, Greg, was that one hit by a car?" She got out through her hands. June never spent as much time outside and around wild animals as I had, so she didn't get the same sense of uneasiness that I had gained from viewing the animals. I took a second to think about what she said. The other deer didn't react with fear or uneasiness to this new one, and it did walk with a limp, so June's conclusion seemed a good enough band-aid for the small gash of uncertainty. "I think so," I murmured. The pack started walking away, and the strange one took up the rear as they walked back into the forest. My answer to her question made her start to tear up, so I took her home and let her know that the deer would be okay, and that we would see him again. How I wish I were wrong. On the ride to June's house, we named the buck Argus, which we thought was a fittingly masculine name for the muscular guy. We didn't see Argus for another month. However, every time I walked June down the back steps in the following month, the feeling of being stalked never went away. I had grown used to the foreboding stalking. We spent so much time at my house that the feeling almost became associated with home and June's warm embrace in my mind. Whenever I visited June's house, or anywhere for that matter, I felt out of place. The next time we saw Argus was right before a full moon. This time, the night sky was clear, and the bright moonlight highlighted the land so much that it gave the illusion that day had broken. We saw his misshapened outline while we were walking down the back steps. He didn't move for what seemed like an hour, even though it couldn't be more than a minute or two. Argus was alone that night, still with all of his weird features. Looking at his outline in the moonlight almost put me into a trance. I was staring straight at him trying to figure out what was wrong with him. He was staring straight back at me, it seemed. I felt like we were in a staring contest, even though I couldn't detect a single feature of his. Eventually, Argus put his head down to eat whatever was below him, but his head didn't move in any sort of normal way. His head moved down like one of those drinking bird's toys that puts its head down just a little too fast. There was a distinct bounce when it came to a stop, just like those toys. It was much the same when he raised his head. Even June thought. This looked off and asked me, maybe we should go check on him. She didn't particularly like animals, but she hated to see them in pain. My gut screamed at me to not get an inch closer. Well, if he survived this long, I bet he'll be fine, I said in a very hesitant voice as I put in the number code to the garage door. No deer could have lived that long after being hit by a car, was the only thought in my mind. The door made a deep grumble, and with a long screech, slowly opened. The noise was loud and always hurt my ears. Time for some lubrication, I guess. I'm sure Argus heard it and ran like most deer when I went to open the passenger's side door for June. I looked back to see if he was still there. He was, but I couldn't feel that he was slightly closer, as if the door had given him a call. After that night, we saw Argus every evening up until the last time I ever saw June happy again. Even when the moonlight was absent, his frame was unmistakable. Sometimes Argus would have a pack of deer with him. Other times, only a handful. Most commonly, he'd be alone. Every time I saw him, some new feature or realization would ring the alarm bells in my head. Argus never unconsciously flicked his ears or heels like I'd seen countless deer do. Argus's neck looked fine from the front, but on rare occasions when he turned his head, it looked like he had a thick mane at the base of his neck. I only observed Argus walk the first time we saw him. He put his head down and moved a little at a time, but I never saw him move for any extended period. Every time we saw Argus, he was slightly closer. A few feet at most, but still closer. The feeling of comfort I once had now dissipated a little more every time we saw him. Every night I didn't bother looking towards the trees. Argus's presence made me sick to my stomach. June, on the other hand, would always point him out, and we'd end up looking at him for minutes. I started staying over at June's house more often, despite her wishes to not be surrounded by her younger brothers. But I didn't want to feel the eyes of nature rubbing on me every chance they had. It didn't matter, though. June's once warm embrace had now brought the presence of eyes. And whenever I came home from her house, I could always tell from the rearview mirror that Argus stood studying me. 2 months passed, and it was the first day of holiday break. A thick coating of snow had covered the ground. June and I were at my house, packing our skiing equipment and clothes for the trip we would embark on the next day. After finishing packing, we fell prey to our nightly routine and sat on the couch for hours, eventually slipping into a deep sleep. I only realized this last fact when waking up at 1 in the morning. June had her head on my chest. I always expected her head to weigh more because of all the knowledge packed into it. She was moving a little, maybe having a dream or a nightmare. I gently shook her awake and let her know I should probably get her home. She told me she was having a wonderful dream, and I told her that she could tell me all about it in the truck. I knew my dad was going to be pissed about me taking the truck out so late, but he was going to be blinded by rage if he knew June stayed the night. I thought dads were supposed to be wingmen to their sons, show them the ropes, not act as tyrannical dictators. Whatever, I thought, as we crunched the snow below our shoes on the back steps. We got down to the driveway, where no snow lay at all. Dad must have shoveled some salt from the street into our tiny driveway. Cheapskate, I thought, as my angst-riddled brain fueled on ahead. The hate for authority drowned out every other thought until the motion light came on, bouncing its light across the driveway into the snow that lay across the field in front of the tree line. The light had been amplified by the snow, and instead of its usual meager 20-foot range, it shot out just before the tree line. I continued towards the garage door, but June hadn't followed me from the base of the steps. I only noticed when she let out a quiet breath. "Greg," she whispered. "Yeah," I let out in a normal speaking voice. As soon as I did, I heard snow crunch rapidly. I fired my eyes towards the direction of the woods and laid my eyes on at least 50 deer. Some were running. Others had shot a similar look in my direction, but most were unbothered, eating something on top of the snow. I couldn't tell the real number. All I could view was a sea of skinny legs and brown fur. I rubbed my tired eyes to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. "Greg, what the hell?" June hissed out. I guessed I scared the closer ones away. "I didn't know, I'm sorry, okay?" I whispered back. While June was wide-eyed and oohing and awing, I was scanning the crowd for one buck in particular. Argus wasn't hard to find, for he still had his antlers, proudly standing tall above his head and all the other deer. The light of the lamp didn't seem to want to illuminate him. He was as far away as he could be, hugging the tree line. The antlers should have fallen off by now. They usually do, at least. I always walk in the forest around the new year to find some. However, Argus didn't seem to understand the memo the other bucks had gotten. Not now, not before. Never had he once in all the time I had seen him. "Can I get an up-close photo of Argus?" June muttered out. I fell silent for some time. I didn't know how to respond. Argus had been torturing me for months, maybe longer, and now June, the smartest person I knew, wanted to get close to that facade. "You stay here. We could spook the big guy into being aggressive. I'll get the photo." The truth was, I wanted to get close, too. From the second I saw him, I knew something was off. And now I had the chance to see what it was. June was giddy with excitement, and she wrapped her arms around me. For a second, I thought about how stupid I was. My dad taught me that if your gut tells you something is off, you should listen. Blood cells fueled by hormonal hate, with the message, "Fuck whatever my dad thought," engraved on the side, ran through my body as I grabbed June's phone and started walking. As I came to the edge of the driveway, I looked back to see June sending me a quick wave before rubbing her sides in an attempt to warm herself. I trudged on. No deer were willing to stay close now. It was as if I were Moses, parting the ocean of cavity before me with just the sound of crunching snow. Every step I took, a few deer ran. They all ran in random directions, some towards the neighbor's house to either side of me, some back towards where June was standing, and some to the altar that was Argus. Argus didn't move at all. His stoic presence only grew stronger as his body grew in size. The closer I drew, none of his fleeing family could change his mind and make him turn and run into the dark forest. The sea of deer slowly dried up, and all that was left were hoof tracks, Argus, and 50 feet of unclosed distance. My eyes had slowly been adjusting to the darkness while on my trek, so I could decipher Argus's features. At that moment, I could see what caused Argus's unique attributes. Argus's head wasn't a deer's head. It was an elk's. It had a thick, brown coat of fur around its neck and towering, sweeping horns. It looked like a hunter's prized possession, an achievement worth bragging about. And that's because it was. At the base of the elk's neck was a circular wooden plaque with a shiny golden rectangle engraved with some important date or weight. One of the glass eyes in the trophy head looked like it was about 5 sizes too big for the socket. It bulged out of the head with a black cylinder that held it to the eye socket. There was no pupil. It was a deep, empty black, with a shimmer of a greenish-blue filter over it. I was now within a stone's throw of the faulty animal. My head spun on, a swivel, and my stomach contents slowly rose. Silence filled the air. As I observed further, Argus's deformities became even clearer. Argus's fur folded on top of itself, all over his body, like there was empty space inside the fabric that couldn't fill. His belly drooped too far to be a normal elk or deer. The tail wasn't the usual white puff of fur, and instead resembled a brown mop head. Snow piled up on top of his back, making it fall inwards. Argus's legs were too thick. They had the width of a black bear's legs. The snow built up right above the ankles. I only then realized there were no marks in the snow around Argus. No hoof prints, no indents in the snow, nothing. I was so transfixed on finding each and every imperfect detail that I didn't even register that I was still walking towards Argus. I was close enough to touch him. He was made of cheap fabric, one would find in a Spirit Halloween store. White dots had been painted on him to make him appear more like the real thing. One last detail stood out. It was his breathing. I could see that Argus's chest wasn't rising and falling. No visible air came from his long, mummified mouth. Something about the eye caught my attention again. From farther away, I thought it was snow falling, but a small white vapor dissipated from around the bulging black eye. The hot breath rose past the previously unseen distance markers on the zoom wheel that was his eye. My body took a step backwards. Bile rushed up the back of my throat. I took another step backwards. Argus's body didn't react. I tried to take another step backwards, but I tripped on something and barreled backwards into the snow. I don't remember much in my anxiety-driven frenzy. The second I tripped, the calm demeanor I put on flashed away in an instant. My arms flailed widely as I tried to catch myself before I hit the ground. I don't know if I shouted. I rolled over and immediately started crawling into a stubble, then to a run. I ran as fast as the deer that bolted out of here from my own presence. I took another stumble, landing face first into the snow. It zapped the heat out of my warm, blood-fueled face. As I climbed the embankment I made with my own body, a new warmth grew upon my face. Fresh tears. I don't remember the rest of the run, just the cries I made as my eyes welled with water. As June came back into blurry-eyed view, June's face turned from excitement to horrified concern. She came running towards me with open arms, but I was running too fast to slow down. I rammed into June, and we both tumbled to the ground. "Greg, what the hell?" she shouted as she lifted her upper body from the cold concrete. She was still in the snow, and I was inputting the code into the garage door. Once the door was rising, I ran back to help her up. It was more of a drag and pull, trying to get her away from Argus's direction. Her own eyes welled up with tears. "Greg, please tell me what is happening. What happened? Is everything okay?" She stammered out, "June, just come and get in. The car." She was fighting my pull. I know she was scared and didn't understand what was happening, but I couldn't let her stand out here within the view of that facade, the one still standing, all that distance behind June. "June, get the fuck in the car. Get in the fucking car," I screamed at her. I immediately regretted it. She stood still, staring at me for a second. Her face scrunched up as she threw her hands over her face and ran towards the garage. I followed suit. We opened the doors, climbed in, and cried in unison. My shaking hands struggled to put in the keys, but once I did, I threw the car in reverse and peeled out, heading for June's house. I tried to go slow on the icy roads, but I just wanted to get away as fast as I could. It's a miracle I didn't crash, given the conditions outside and inside the car. June and I cried most of the way to her house for very different reasons. As I was pulling into her driveway, it seemed everything went quiet. "What got into you tonight, Greg?" she said, breaking the oppressive silence. I said nothing back. I couldn't. "Greg, please tell me, and I'll understand. Please." Her voice broke as she fought back tears. That's the issue. She'd understand what I saw. She'd know what Argus really was. "Greg, please." I stared out the front window, but could tell the car ride here wasn't the last of the tears. "Love you, Greg. I'm so confused. I'm scared. Please, just anything." Another plea. My hands started to shake. I wanted so badly to tell her, but wouldn't that scar her? Wouldn't she remember this for the rest of her life? She tried to say something else, but emotion finally exploded out of her body as she curled up in the seat and cried. My heart wanted to shout out everything I saw, but my teenage brain thought I was being righteous. After what felt like an eternity of listening to the love of my teenage life weeping, I got out of the truck, walked around to the passenger side door, and led June back inside her home. I didn't say goodbye or good night. I never said I loved her back. I didn't drive home after that. I parked in a Walmart parking lot and stayed awake all night. I tried to go to bed, but so much was rushing through my head. How mad would my dad be when I pulled in the next morning? Would June ever trust me again? Love me again? I could have slept, asking those questions to myself. But one of the questions kept my eyes peeled in every direction. Was Argus following me? I pondered that question for a few hours before the light of day broke through the snow on the windshield. I figured it was time to go and face the wrath of my father. I had to build up the courage to even drive in the direction of my once perceptibly safe home. I was probably in the car for another hour, telling myself that Argus would be gone. He was waiting in the driveway for me, pacing back and forth, trying to calm himself. I parked and got out. The barge of words slammed against me instantly. "Where the hell were you, son?" he boomed. "I thought you might have been dead. If that truck is damaged at all, may God help you, son." I didn't look at my father's face. I was too busy staring out to where Argus stood. Like before, I unconsciously started walking towards where he was the previous night. As I walked, I could see all the trails from the previous night, embedded in the snow. Small brown dots lay on top of the snow. Ones that looked familiar to my childhood antics in the woods. My dad's voice slowly got quieter. Maybe it was from the distance or his confusion, maybe both. I finally made it to where Argus stood. Few empty bags of chips and hand warmers littered the ground. An empty energy drink can was half submerged in the snow. A yellow bag of feed lay out in the open among all the trash. I sat down in the cold snow. All capacity to show emotions was zapped out of me the night prior. My mind had gone blank, unsure of what to do, what to say, where to go, who to tell. I was sure of one thing. I could never tell June what I saw. It would be better to break her heart than taint her beautiful mind with whatever was in that crudely made costume. Maybe it would have been better to tell her. As I write this, that's all I could think about. Maybe she could live with it. Maybe I would have known what she was, dreaming about that night. Story number 11. Please, just read this. Don't dismiss it as a creepypasta or some creative writing exercise. I don't have anywhere else to turn. The police would have me committed. My friends would think I was on drugs, and I don't have any family left to call. I'm writing this down because I need some record of it to exist outside of my own head. Because I'm starting to think my head isn't a safe place anymore. I need to know I'm not insane, even if the evidence is piling up against me. My name is Leo. I'm 28. I work a boring data entry job from my small apartment. My life, until about a month ago, was a flat line of routine and predictability. I would give anything, to have that back. It all started with the mirror. It's an old thing, tall and imposing with a heavy dark wood frame carved with details that are hard to focus on, like leaves and faces that seem to shift when you're not looking directly at them. I bought it for next to nothing at a cluttered antique shop that was closing down. The old man who sold it to me had a cataract in one eye that made it look like a clouded marble. He just grunted when I asked the price and took my cash without looking at me. I should have seen that as an omen. At the time, I just thought I'd gotten a bargain. I hung it on my bedroom wall, opposite my bed. It made the small room feel bigger. That was my first mistake. The first sign that something was wrong was subtle. So subtle I thought I was imagining it. You know that feeling when you're exhausted? When your brain is lagging a half second behind reality? It was like that. I'd be brushing my teeth in the bathroom, and I'd turn my head. In the reflection, my head would turn a fraction of a second later. A tiny, almost imperceptible delay. A neurological hiccup. I'd shake my head, blame it on lack of sleep, and move on. But it kept happening. I'd walk past a shop window, and my reflection would take one extra step after I'd already stopped. I'd be on a video call for work, and my own image on the screen would seem to blink just after I did. It was like watching the world on a bad internet connection, a constant, low-level desynchronization that was just enough to put my teeth on edge. I tried to rationalize it. I told myself it was my brain playing tricks on me, a symptom of stress from my monotonous job. I started taking vitamins. I tried meditating. I forced myself to go to bed earlier, but the lag persisted, a tiny crack in the foundation of my reality. The first time I felt a true, cold-in-your-stomach fear was about 3 weeks ago. I was getting dressed for the day, standing in front of the antique mirror. I reached for a plain gray t-shirt from my closet. In the mirror, the other Leo, my reflection, reached for a blue one. I froze. My hand was hovering over the gray shirt. His hand was hovering over a blue one, a blue shirt that I don't own. I've never owned it. I stared, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. For a long moment, we were both perfectly still. Then, very slowly, his eyes in the mirror lifted and met mine, and he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a small, tight, knowing smirk. It was the expression of someone who has a secret, a terrible and wonderful secret. Then, as quickly as it happened, it was over. I blinked, and the reflection was normal again. He was me, hand hovering over the same gray shirt, a neutral, slightly confused expression on his face. My face. I stumbled back, away from the mirror, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't get dressed. I called in sick to work and spent the day huddled on my sofa, as far from the bedroom as I could get. I told myself it was a hallucination, a waking dream. It had to be. But the game had started, and he was the only one who knew the rules. He began to change things, small things at first. I'd be looking in the mirror, and for a split second, my brown eyes would be a piercing, unfamiliar green in the reflection. He'd be wearing a watch on his wrist, a sleek silver thing I'd never seen before. I'd look down at my own wrist, and it would be bare. When I looked back up, his was bare, too. He was testing me, teasing me. I tried to fight back. I took a bedsheet and draped it over the large mirror in my bedroom. The sense of relief was immediate and overwhelming, but it didn't last. That evening, I was washing dishes, and I glanced at the dark, reflective surface of the microwave. I saw my kitchen behind me, but I wasn't in the reflection. He was. He was standing by the counter where I was, but he was just watching me, drying a plate that wasn't there with a towel that didn't exist. His expression was one of patient amusement. He wasn't just in the mirror anymore. He was in any surface that could cast an image. The screen of my phone when it was locked, the black mirror of my television when it was off, a puddle on the pavement after it rained, a polished silver spoon. He was everywhere. There was no escape. My own apartment had become a house of mirrors, a prison where the warden was my own face. The psychological toll was immense. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every time I closed my eyes, I was terrified of what he might be doing. I started hearing things, a faint tapping sound coming from the bedroom. I'd lie awake on the sofa, listening to it. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a fingernail on glass. It was coming from behind the sheet I'd hung over the mirror. He was knocking. He wanted me to let him out. The physical world started to blur with his. One morning I was shaving, leaning over the bathroom sink, trying to ignore my own face in the small, uncovered cabinet mirror. I saw that his reflection had a long, thin, red scratch running down its left cheek. I felt a chill go through me. I finished shaving, my hands shaking, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. As I was waiting for it to brew, I idly touched my own left cheek. My fingers came away with a smear of blood. I rushed back to the bathroom. There it was, a long, thin, red scratch, identical to the one I'd seen on him. It hadn't been there a minute ago. I hadn't felt a thing. He could touch me now. He could affect my reality. That's when the memory gaps started. I'd be in the living room, reading a book, and then I'd wake up in the kitchen with no recollection of having moved. The book would be back on the shelf. A half-eaten apple would be on the counter. It was only a few minutes of lost time, but it was terrifying. Was I moving, or was he moving me? He started getting bolder, more malicious. I was on another video call for work, trying my best to act normal, to focus on the spreadsheets and ignore my own face in the corner of the screen. My boss was talking, and I saw my reflection on the screen smile, that terrible, knowing smile. Then my mouth opened, and I heard myself interrupt my boss. I said something awful, something personal and cruel about his recent divorce. The words just came out. I hadn't thought them. I hadn't wanted to say them. The entire call went silent. I saw the shock and hurt on my boss's face. In the corner of the screen, my reflection looked deeply satisfied. I stammered an apology and disconnected, my body trembling with a mixture of shame and pure terror. He was taking control, not just of my reflection, but of my voice, my actions. Stopped leaving the apartment. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk what he might make me do or say. I ordered groceries online. I told my work I had a family emergency and needed to take indefinite leave. They were probably relieved to be rid of me after my outburst. My world shrank to the four walls of my apartment, a fortress that was also my cage. The isolation made it worse. I had no one to talk to, no one to ground me. It was just me and him, and he was getting stronger every day. The lost time became more frequent, the gaps longer. I'd lose an hour, sometimes two. I'd find things in my apartment that I didn't recognize. A book on quantum physics on my nightstand. I'm not a reader of science. A single, elegant, black feather on my pillow. A half-finished sketch of a bird in a notebook, drawn with a skill I do not possess. He had hobbies. He had interests. He was building a life for himself inside of mine. Last week, I had a dream. It was the most vivid dream of my life. I was inside the mirror. I was standing in a cold, gray, silent version of my bedroom. I could see the real room through the glass, vibrant and full of life. I saw myself. No, I saw him, sleeping in my bed. As I watched, he woke up. He stretched, got out of bed, and walked over to the mirror. He looked straight at me. I was trapped, a silent, screaming ghost behind the glass. I pounded on the invisible barrier, but I made no sound. He just watched me, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled that smile, raised a hand, and placed it flat against the glass. On my side, I felt an unbearable, freezing cold spread from the point of contact. He leaned in close, his breath fogging the glass on his side, and he whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he turned and walked away, starting my day, my life. I was the reflection now. I woke up on the floor, shivering, the sheet torn down from the mirror. I was staring up at my own reflection, which was looking down at me from the bed. That's when I knew he wasn't just trying to torment me. He was trying to switch places, which brings me to tonight, to right now. I've been sitting here for hours, trying to write this, trying to get the story straight. My back is to the window. It's dark outside, so the glass has become another perfect black mirror. I've been trying so hard not to look at it. I can feel his presence behind me, a cold spot in the room. I can feel his eyes on my back. A few minutes ago, my curiosity, or maybe my fear, finally won. I couldn't resist. I had to see what he was doing. I slowly, carefully, turned my head to look at the reflection in the window. I saw the back of my own head, the glow of the monitor. I saw myself sitting at this desk. But the reflection wasn't looking away. It was typing. Its fingers were flying across the keyboard, a blur of motion, frantic, desperate. As I watched, paralyzed, the reflection stopped typing. It slowly, deliberately, turned its head in the reflection until it was looking directly back at me. It gave me a wide, triumphant, terrible grin. It was a smile of pure victory. Then it lifted one hand, the hand that wasn't mine, and it waved, a slow, mocking, final goodbye. A wave of dizziness and confusion washed over me, so strong I almost fell off my chair. My vision blurred. The world felt distant, muffled. When my head cleared, I was staring at my monitor again. I was staring at this post, at these words. I remember thinking about writing it. I remember the fear and the desperation, but I don't remember typing any of it. Not a single sentence. My fingers are resting on the keyboard, but they feel like foreign objects, like pieces of carved stone. I can feel them moving now, continuing this text, but the impulse isn't coming from me. It's like I'm a passenger in the back seat of my own body, watching someone else drive. I am losing. No, that's not right. I have already lost. I'm looking at the window again. He's not in the reflection anymore. The reflection is just an empty chair, because he's not behind me anymore. He's in here, with me. I can feel him settling into the driver's seat, checking the mirrors, his cold, patient consciousness wrapping around my own like a python. He's been writing this all along, using my fear, my memories. He needed me to be scared. He needed me to be weak. He needed me to open the door, and I did. This whole post, this whole story. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a birth announcement. My fingers are moving. I can't stop them. He's making me write this last part. He wants me to tell you. He wants you to know. He thinks it's poetic. I can feel my own consciousness fading, being pushed down into a small, dark, cold corner of my own mind. It's the gray, silent place from my dream. The world behind the glass. He's standing up now. My body is standing up. I'm walking to the bedroom. I'm standing in front of the antique mirror. And for the first time, there is no lag. We are perfectly, completely in sync. But I am not the one in control. I see my face, his face, and he is smiling. He's raising my hand, his hand. He's touching the cold glass, and I can finally hear what he whispered in my dream. It's echoing in my head, in his new voice. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He made me write this. He wanted an audience for his escape. He wanted witnesses, and he wanted to leave a warning. Or maybe it's a promise. He knows you're reading this. He knows you're looking at a screen, a black mirror. He says it's so much easier now that he knows how. He says there are so many doors, so many reflections. Look up from your screen, just for a second. Look at your own reflection in the dark parts of the monitor. Are you sure it's you? Are you sure it blinked when you did? It's a lovely day out here. I think I'll go for a walk. Story number 12. If anyone ever found out what I do, they'd say, I've got the worst job in the world. They'd be wrong. I don't think about it like that. I think about keeping you, keeping us from going over a cliff, like a field where weeds pop up, and my job is to yank them before they spread and choke everything else out. That's how I tell it to myself, anyway. I call it weeding or pruning. I'm not telling you how. Don't ask. That part. If it gets in your head, you don't sleep. Trust me, I don't. I don't want that on you. What I can say, I meet the weeds on the first night. Bracelet ink still wet. Sometimes the name isn't even decided yet. I go early, because early is easy, easier than later. That's how this works. I don't work alone. There's this voice, the messenger. He never yells. He shows up quiet. Bells so soft you're not even sure you heard 'em. Little whiff of candle wax. Cheap glass in the hall, leaking a bit of color, even with the lights off. Coin in my pocket. Gets warm, just a touch. That's how I know he's around. He never gives me names. He gives me roles, like titles in some weird old book. Butcher King, Plague Mouth, Fire Shepherd, Bomb Prophet. He tells me what that weed turns into if I don't do my job, and what that person does to everyone else. I keep a notebook, a ledger. I write the role, and then I write what didn't happen after me. Stuff like Butcher King, roundups by 28, thousands locked in basements, whole stadiums packed, names on lists, people gone. Didn't happen. Bomb Prophet, markets and buses, 12 cities in 5 years. Didn't happen. Fire Shepherd, hymns in arenas, then bonfires, then ash, flags for 30 winters. Didn't happen. Plague Mouth, miracle clinics, cameras love him. Year 6, new fever, homemade. Didn't happen. These aren't storms. People did those in the lines he gave me. And I stopped those people. Weeds. Before they could stand. That was the deal. Call me what you want. Like I said, I called it pruning. Before this, my life was just wreckage. Bad choices. Bad. Years, nothing holding me up. Now I get it. All that crap was just training, toughening me up for this. And I swear, I feel blessed. Like I finally landed on the one thing I was born to do. Once between jobs, I asked him if there's a place for me after. I didn't say heaven or something like that, but yeah, that's what I meant. He said, where the blinding light casts no shadows, and you are home, at peace. Kind of foggy line, but I took it like a promise. You do ugly work, you get a quiet room after. That was the bargain in my head. I do nights. Hospitals. I can hear the second right before a room turns bad. Don't know how to explain it, I just hear it. Combat medic before all this, my ears learned things. The protocol is simple. I call, he confirms, I do the correction. That's all you're getting about methods. Last night was different. Buildings quiet, heavy, quiet. Maternity floor, chapel door closed like always. But the hallway smells like someone just did a service, incense with the lights off. Then he comes on. Bells sink through the building like water. Coin warms up. My pulse goes flat, the good kind, like I've been sitting for an hour. Severe, he says. That word from him is a stamp. No arguing. Roll, I say. Ledger needs it. False. Healer, crowd binder, soft tyrant. Soft tyrant is the worst kind. Not boots, not flags. It smiles and please, and next thing you know, you're giving them the keys because it feels nice. You've seen it. I get into the room the usual way. Not magic. You walk like you belong. Most doors say okay. People look past you if you let them. Parents look lit from inside. Not exactly happy. More like full. Nurses keep finding reasons to hang around. A cleaner I don't know is humming 4 notes super soft. The whole room is breathing on the same beat. If you ever felt a room do that, you know. It makes your shoulders drop. I put my hand on the bed rail, and my left hand shake. The shake I've had since a bad winter. Just stops, like a switch. The wrist stops hurting, too. I don't like needing anything, but I'm not gonna lie. Felt good. Like someone finally turned off a fan that's been on in your head for years. I don't look at the weed first. I check the monitor, the window, the hands in the room. Then I ask him for a measure. He doesn't always give one. This time he says, 3 winters, 7 cities, 1 border. His voice has that bell sound in it again. It's pretty. I hate that it's pretty. I stall. Say I gotta check something. Step into the hall. The color rings from the stained glass are sliding on the floor like they want to make letters. But they don't. You know that screensaver with the DVD logo that never hits the corner? Like that. Annoying. I put my ear to the chapel door. No hymn. Under it, a low machine hum. Field tent sound. Generators. Bad radios. I pop the lock. Most locks are just, you show them you're serious and they quit. Inside. Not holy. Fake. Bell. Shells. No clappers. Candles. Glass tubes. The altar. A warm box. I put the coin on it. It sticks. Not a magnet. Like it recognizes it. My gut flips. I want to kick it over. This is what you've been running me with? I smack the bells. Tin crash. Under it. Click, click. Hiss. That 3 a.m. numbers station. On a junk radio. Severe. He says again. In my head. Same word. Different. Bottom voice to it now. Roll, I say. Because habit is stupid strong. False healer. Crowd binder. Soft tyrant. Yeah, I say. Shut up a second. I don't even know why I said it. The place looked like a mall Santa set for church, you know? And the coin sticking like that made me feel tagged. Like a dog with a chip. He doesn't get mad. He never does. He's calm. That's his thing. Calm voice, church smell, nice words. He talks while he's taking something. Talk straight, I say. No church stuff. What are you? He goes quiet. Then same calm voice. Confirm. Say something. Real, I tell him. He says, where the blinding light casts no shadows, and you are home. That's when I lose it. No, I say, and I'm yelling now. I hit the bell shells, tin rattle, kick the hot box. I grab the coin. It burns my fingers. You're not a messenger. You're a handler. You ran me. You fucking made me pull weeds. Who are you? What are you? Say it. Say something. The clicking jumps. Fast. Like a busted radio. The color smears once and cuts off. Wax smell gone. Coin goes cold. The hum dies like a plug got yanked. Nothing. He's gone. I run. Out the fake chapel. Down the stairs. Past the snack machines. Past the sleepy guard. Out the side door into wet air. Skies empty. No plan, just legs, street, another street, alley, fence, bang my knee, keep going. The ledger hits my thigh every step, heavy. The fuck just happened? Who put me in this? Why me? What did I do? What the fuck did I do? I stop under a dead streetlight. Can't breathe right. Sweat slick and cold under my shirt. Hands shaking again. Wrist hurts again. Heart kicks, then trips. Mouth tastes like rust water. Fine. Real. Fuck that. I look back at the hospital. Dark windows. No color. No bells. Just my breath sawing like a busted fan. I don't open the ledger. It's a brick on my thigh, and I'm not strong right now. I called them weeds, so I could pull them, but what if they weren't weeds? You survived, for now, but the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.